Hello and a very warm welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X and on Twitch. And our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community. Without you, we couldn't make this show each week. So a huge thank you as always. And a big thanks to Pitter Self-Drive for again sponsoring this episode. They're offering TSP listeners 10% off rentals with the code TOTALSAINTS. That's all one word. You can use that code when booking online or quote the code when you're booking over the phone. They offer cars, vans, trucks and minibus hire at very reasonable prices. They're flexible on short-term or long-term rental needs and they operate a 24-hour drop-off service. So there's no need to stress about dropping a vehicle off during working hours. And if you need a van for a tit run or maybe moving some furniture, they now offer hourly van hire as well. Pitter Self-Drive is based in West End, making them the best solution for Southampton van hire at affordable prices. And you can find out more or get in touch. Head to the website, which is pitterselfdrive.co.uk, or give them a call on 02380 474 443. Coming up this week on the podcast, the unbeaten run continues with a decent win over Sheffield Wednesday at St Mary's. So many outstanding performances and goals to review. It's a trip to South Wales, next Swansea, the opponents this weekend. Going to preview that one with the help of Luke Davies from the Swans Cast Podcast. And Saints are doing some business in the January transfer window, so we'll get the very latest on that as well. My name's Martin Starke, and joining me this evening are Steve Grant, the owner of SaintsWeb, Alfie House, who's the senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo, and Glen is writer of the blog League One -10. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 259 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, we start with the weekly shout out for our Patreon community because their monthly contributions support the show. We've got 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And aside from supporting the pod, each of those tiers has different perks. There's access to an ad-free version of the podcast. There's exclusive TSP t-shirts and merch bundles, plus the TSP FPL, and you get access to some of the events and much more as well. A couple of shouts to do, actually. Hello to James Kibbe, who says, my son Leo and I have been tuning in regularly over the past couple of seasons, and it seemed fitting to join the Francis Benali tier, having been right behind his header, arcing into the top corner at the Dell all those years ago. Probably still recovering from the shock, if I'm honest. Keep up the great work. So thank you to James, and thanks to Leo. Nice to hear from you. And hello to Mike, who's upgraded his account this week to the Francis Benali tier. So thank you, Mike. If you'd like to get involved in supporting TSP each month, just head over to patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast for more details. And all the links are in the podcast show notes and on the YouTube description. So let's talk about some football, shall we? Saints beating Sheffield Wednesday 4-0 on Saturday to climb up to second in the table, albeit for about half an hour, I think, at most. Steve, we're kind of getting used to seeing a few goals at home. What was your take on the game at the weekend?
Yeah, it's very good. I think that's 19 goals in the last 5 home games, if you include the cup one as well. So that's they're certainly providing plenty of entertainment these days. I'm sure there must have been at least one of the recent seasons where we kind of scored more than 19 goals over an entire season. So to do it to do that kind of in the space of 3 or 4 weeks is kind of a breath of fresh air, really. And I mean, this game kind of followed the pattern of all of those ones that have come before it, really, in that we've kind of dominated from pretty much minute one. And once we've kind of taken advantage of a slight lapse from the opposition, taking the lead, kind of not really looked back. Although on this occasion, at least, Gavin Bazunu's at least been extended into having to make a couple of important saves at the right times. One at 1-0 and one at 2-0. Where if either of those go in, then I mean maybe the momentum shifts a little bit. But having made those saves and kept his end of the bargain, the guys at the other end have made hay again. Once again, we've scored goals deep into games when teams are tiring, and again, it's another kind of validation for the style of play that that we've installed, that is kind of what's going to happen on a regular basis because of the way we shift the opposition, and they're constantly having to think and move around. So yeah, very few complaints really.
It was good. I mean, Glenn, once that second goal came, it was just total and pure domination, really, from us.
You're on mute, Glenn. Good start.
Great start on mute.
Schoolboy error.
Yeah, schoolboy error. Sorry. Yeah, what was the question again? Yeah, second goal. They had the free kick straight after the second goal. That obviously they could have hit back with that, and at the time I thought it was a brilliant save, but then when you watch it back, it was actually sort of straight at him. He hit it hard, but it was it had to be saved, obviously. But I think Bazunu would have been disappointed if that had gone in. But once that didn't go in, Sheffield Wednesday, I felt they kind of gave up at that point, and it was like, we're not getting anything today. A few of their players kind of trundling around, in the last part of the game, and and the substitutes that we brought on, sort of like all made a difference. Along with the players who were still on the pitch. But it was, I mean, it was, as Steve said, it was kind of, it's becoming the norm. It's becoming sort of, the complacency is a thing that we have to guard against, because not every game's going to be like that. And as I keep saying, we will lose a game between now and the end of the season. It's going to happen eventually, but it was never going to happen yesterday. Once that second goal went in, there was no way back for Sheffield Wednesday, and they look quite limited. And what I liked about it is the way we kind of ruthlessly exposed their limitations. They had a big guy playing at the back who was he was back in the team for the first time in about 4 weeks, and he was really, really struggling. And they just swarmed all over him. And whilst that's not very nice from a human point of view, that's this is top level sport we're talking about. So you have to do that, and we ruthlessly exposed the fact that they were struggling. I thought Danny Roll was interesting. I thought he kind of got stuck between two systems, really. They started off in full Ralph mode with pressing from the front, and then they kind of sat back a little bit, but they never quite committed to either style, I felt, and I don't think that did him any favours ultimately. So from what I've read on Sheffield Wednesday forums, they kind of think this is the first game he's kind of got it wrong. But I said to them during the week, losing to us won't define their season. But they need to show a little bit more heart and running, I think, than they did after we went 2-0 up. So happy days.
Yeah, plenty of outstanding performances, as I said, and goals to get into. I mean, Alfie, yesterday, I think you suggested that might have been the performance of the season. Are you still as impressed 24 hours later? And what stood out the most for you?
Yeah, I think probably the second half definitely was, in my opinion. I think Glen's right about the system, I suppose, but what they did do was they always had constant pressure. There's always at least one man sort of attacking the Saints' possession. And what that meant is, the Russell Martin system, which is based on finding the spare man, there was always a spare man. And I think they popped it around with a lot of speed. They move the ball quickly now. It's not true at all that they pass it around slowly, but even quicker yesterday. They were always finding people, sort of cutting people open. So I thought that, I think in terms of entertainment, in terms of electricity, I thought it was probably the best performance. But I think we've seen a couple now. We've seen 5-0, 4-0 twice at St Mary's. We're being really treated. And, interesting to hear you talk about Danny Roll there, Glenn. I can say he's a lovely bloke. He came into the press conference room after, and he shook everybody's hand individually, and he sort of introduced himself to everyone. Very softly spoken. I'm sure he's a lovely guy, and we do genuinely wish him the best. But his team were not at it for the level of Saints. And I did want to just sort of mention Adam Armstrong, because that has to be his best game. For a Saints shirt, probably in his career. He's unlucky to not be attributed with a hat-trick of assists, because the first one is clearly tried to play it to Che, and just because they've got a little knock on it, it's not counted. But he's now got 14 goals and 11 assists, and that's not including the opener for Che. Sir Ricky Lambert, I think, had 41 last time Saints were promoted. He's got 19 games left. He needs 17 goal contributions to beat Ricky Lambert's record there. So, you know what, he might well do it.
Do you think he'll do it? Do you think he will?
Well, it's a lot to keep up, isn't it? I mean, he's obviously, I can't remember exactly how many he's got in the last 10 games. I think it's 12 and 10 or something stupid like that. To keep up 17 and 19 is not going to be easy, but if he does that, there's every chance the Saints are in the top two by the end of the season.
It's going to be amazing. Just in case you're not aware of the record that's been doing the rounds, and everyone was talking about this yesterday, Saints are now unbeaten in 19 league games, 20 in all competitions, which is their best run since becoming a Football League club in 1920. It's also a record for us because I make it 20 vaguely positive pods in a row, and I don't think that's happened since the podcast started. So
I'm not sure the Coventry one was that positive, was it?
Vaguely positive, vaguely. Steve, I mean, Alfie mentioned Adam Armstrong there. Ryan Fraser was, I think, given man of the match in the stadium. For me, Adam Armstrong probably had the better game, but Ryan Fraser was deserving of that start yesterday.
Yeah, and he's now doing it from the start. The performances are not just where he's been able to sort of see from the bench, see where the opposition is potentially weakest, and kind of attack that area with fresh legs. He's now able to do it from the beginning of games, and that's kind of testament to obviously a lot of hard work, but also just getting yourself in the right shape. Clearly, obviously, not played a game for months when he signed for us, so coming off the bench was always going to be the likely option. And it was, I mean, we'd mentioned ourselves, hadn't we? That it'd been frustrating that every time he'd earned himself a start from his performances off the bench, he then kind of threw it away by kind of more or less being anonymous in those games where he started. But now he's obviously in and sort of fully integrated. I mean, it's going to be difficult to shift him out of the team, I would imagine, for the foreseeable. Dozy and Sulemana and Aribo and whoever else might be sort of fighting for one of those attacking wide spots. I mean, good luck getting that spot off of him.
And Glenn, on Kyle Walker-Peters, he was the other one for me that was a real kind of standout. And he does it every week. You talk about Adam Armstrong, we talk about Ryan Fraser, but Kyle Walker-Peters yesterday I thought was just a proper 10 out of 10.
Yeah, the way we play is, obviously the opposition fullback on that side yesterday had to deal with Adam Armstrong pulling into those areas. And he's relying on his midfield players to get back and, give him a hand with Kyle Walker-Peters joining in. And that was the thing. Sheffield Wednesday picked basically 4 forwards, and the left winger wasn't anywhere near Kyle at any point. And yeah, he just had a great game. He just looks a yard quicker than every other player he's playing against. And it's the only thing that frustrates me slightly about Kyle is that sometimes his ball into the box, it's almost like he's just hit it over rather than picking someone out. I mean, that's what I wanted to say about Adam Armstrong, actually. The fact that he, both those times he found himself in the wide areas, he got his head up and he picked that ball out to Fraser. He picked the one out to Mara. And it sounds like a simple skill, but so many players in wide areas don't do it. They just bang it over. So that's the only slight thing about Kyle. But the amount he gets involved in the play is ridiculous. And there was one bit where he was over at left back, and then he ended up picking up the ball in the centre of midfield and spreading it out wide. And eventually it was him that got the cross in from the right wing. So he's so involved. I think some of the managers we had last season, and Russell Martin this season both said he's a great player. He can play absolutely anywhere, and obviously right back is by far his best position. But you can see why he's happy in his football, and see why he wants to stay and play here, because he's allowed to perform at the best of his ability. He's allowed to turn up where he wants, and he trusts the other players to keep hold of the ball so he doesn't get caught out of position if he does try and do something a bit different. So yeah, another great game for him, and he still won't get in anyone's team of the year. But who cares?
I was going to say that he's going under the radar, which is great for us, obviously. But if he was any better, he'd be playing for a top 6 club. So thank God he can't put the ball in 100%.
He's a full England international. I mean, you got to remember that.
He was in a squad last season. It's not even as if that's a sort of distant memory.
Yeah, in the context
although we'd like last season to be a distant memory, really.
Yeah.
Just a word on the centre backs, Alfie, Harwood, Bellis yesterday. Those balls over the top, trying. I think he tried a couple yesterday, didn't quite come off. But now we've stopped trying to get Jack Stevens into that back four. I think he's kind of moved on from that experiment. They were epic yesterday.
Well, he does still bring him on at the earliest opportunity every game, doesn't he? Sort of about 65, 70 minutes he'll get him on. But, I mean, there's nothing more that we can really add about Jan Bednarek and Taylor Bellis, in my opinion, because we know how good both of them are at this point. They're so reliable. Jan is a proper defender, and Taylor's, you can tell he's played for Man City for 12 years because he can do anything with the ball. So very, very lucky to have both of those. And, it begs the question, if they go up to the Premier League next season, are those two rather, they good enough to be the starting pair? We've seen that Jan Bednarek probably has been tested at times at Premier League level, but those two look so settled. Would you be tempted to improve on that? I mean, I'll open the question to you because I don't know the answer.
It would be a low priority, I would suggest, compared to other areas. Taylor. I mean, we could always bring back Lianco and Chiletazar.
no particular issue with the latter, but the other,
yeah. Well, thankfully we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Steve, we talked about being in control of games and winning these games like 3-0 at home, 4-0 at home. The thing is, it does mean it's a good time to introduce some of the younger players as well. And when Tyler Diblin came on, he looked pretty sharp and got the crowd off their feet on there.
Yeah, I mean it's a perfect opportunity, isn't it? When the game's won, there's absolutely no risk, no pressure on the kid's shoulders. And I mean, literally the first time he got the ball, he's kind of done a little shuffle past their fullback and run in behind, and then had a decent shot blocked. So yeah, the kid, I mean, he's clearly got bags of confidence, as you would expect of a player of his age coming through an academy system. They've all got huge amounts of self-belief, which you have to kind of make it anywhere in the game, really. And it's kind of great to get in when the atmosphere is kind of in the mood like it is at the moment. Because I mean, if we were introducing him as kind of, oh Christ, come on Tyler, can you kind of come and conjure something up? Like in that Leicester game back in September, for example, then all of a sudden it's a completely different environment, and you're asking them to do something that isn't really reasonable, I don't think. Whereas in the current situation where we're winning every week, especially at home, and winning comfortably, then by all means, blood the youngsters, get them used to it, and say this is what you've worked hard for. But you're going to have to keep on and work even harder to kind of retain that spot, because obviously at the moment he's getting his position on the bench because we've got number of injuries and player, and obviously Aribo away on international duty. His task now is to basically, when he gets his opportunity, is to play so well that he keeps that spot on merit.
Before we move on to the Swansea game, we do player of the week. I just wanted to do, just around the room, best goal from yesterday. What was the one that really stood out? I think for me, I would probably say Adam Armstrong's, just because we needed that second goal, and it kind of just took the pressure off. But of the four, Glenn, which was the one that had you purring? Which was your finest?
Sekumara's goal.
Just the build up to it.
Yeah, just the build up, the ball in from Walker Peters to Fraser, and he kind of blindly played it backward, blindly sort of played it around the corner. Adam Armstrong sort of third man run to pick it up, and like I said, he picked out the player at the back post. That was, though Sheffield Wednesday didn't make a particularly good effort, if the play is that precise and everyone is that committed to what they're trying to do with every pass, then it's very, very difficult to stop. And that's a great goal. Sekumara's having a great time, isn't he? I think he scored 3 goals from a combined distance of about 4 yards. So
he's now the scorer.
Yeah, I mean he's got three goals in the space of like a game and a half, I think, in terms of his actual game time.
So it's all good. Che Adams is scoring, Sekumara's scoring, and
don't need a striker.
No, absolutely not. No, we need another midfielder instead.
Was that the standout goal for you as well, Alfie? Would you agree with
well,
on that one?
I think they're all good, but I like the individual pick out from Adam Armstrong to Ryan Fraser. I think is really good because the way Ryan Fraser's not even in the frame when Adam Armstrong picks the ball up. He drives a few yards, fully sails a defender, and still manages to just sort of clip it across with the inside of his foot. It's a brilliant pick out, and obviously Ryan Fraser with a trademark finish as well. I mean, you joked about it, I think, last week, Steve, that he used to score goals like that against Saints. Obviously, I wasn't following the club at that time, but he does seem to score that every week now. He's brilliant at just picking the far bottom corner out.
Steve, your favourite one from yesterday?
Yeah, the fourth one, I think. Icing on the cake type job, and yeah, I mean, load of different players involved, and just the movement. I mean, yeah, you can kind of point to Sheffield Wednesday having given up the ghost by that point, but even so, I think that movement probably still cuts open most defences at this level.
Yeah.
So yeah, really well worked, I thought.
And names for the player of the week vote then. Steve, I'll stick with you. Do you want to go first? I guess there's the obvious three that performed well yesterday. But
yeah, I mean, I'll go with Adam Armstrong to start with. Yeah, I think I'd agree with the earlier comment. That's probably his best game for us, just as a combined thing. I mean, there's obviously been other games where he's been the decisive factor in terms of scoring goals, but often his performance, even in those games, he's kind of drifted in and out a little bit. But this one, yesterday even, he was constantly involved and always involved in kind of all the good stuff, really.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Alfie?
I will go with Carl Walker-Peters, just because I think that he's going so far under the radar. And I gave 3 10 out of 10s actually in my player ratings, which I don't think you should give 10 out of 10s really, but I was feeling a little bit excited after the game, so I gave 3.
You'll never work for L'Equipe.
No, that's true. I won't.
And Glenn?
Yeah, it's got to be Wee Man. Simply because, as Steve said, he's now sort of playing from the start. I was very impressed with him in the Walsall game because he just ran for 95 minutes. He was dead on his feet at the end of that one. And he was, for a player of his experience playing in that sort of game to put in that amount of effort, and I think, we've done it on here. We've questioned his attitude from time to time when he first joined the club. He's clearly loving life at the moment and is, to be prepared to put in that sort of performance against Walsall. And he followed it up again yesterday. So it was, it was going to be a bit of a challenge to a newer challenge, if you like, to do it in a league game for 90 minutes. And I thought he was excellent throughout. And lovely finish for the goal. And heavily involved in that goal that Sekumara scored. So it has to be him.
The obvious thing about Ryan Fraser at the moment as well is that he's obviously living in Bournemouth, as you'd expect, and I think his partner's from Winchester as well. So I mean, in terms of a location and a club, this makes total sense for him to want to get another 2 or 3 years here. So it makes complete sense.
Nice. We'll get that poll on our social media. Now, we only played each other, I think it was 3 weeks ago, but next up it's the return fixture with Swansea. So to help us preview that one, I'm pleased to say that Luke Davies from the Swans Cast Podcast is joining us. Hi, Luke. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me on. And I know it's not been that long since the last one, is it?
It's a bit bizarre, isn't it? Lots to talk about, though. New manager coming in. Happy with how things? Happy with the appointment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's difficult because they kind of went with a different direction with Michael Duff, and now they've admitted maybe that they got it wrong. The fans kind of wanted to continue what Russell Martin did. Obviously, you know all about that now. And Luke Williams was Russell Martin's number 2 when he came in at Swansea. So he's going to obviously familiarise himself with his old colleague. Apparently, they didn't really have the best of endings before Luke Williams left. So it might be a little bit of something there for this match. Not 100%, that's not been confirmed. He doesn't really want to talk about it in the press conferences. So, we'll see.
He's got his work cut out there, hasn't he? He's got a lot of making up to do, given the start to the season.
You could say that. Before the game on the weekend, though, we were actually only 3 points worse off than we were last season. So the difference is last season we had a plan, a game plan, identity, something going forward, if you like, building towards something. Whereas this season it seemed to be more up in the air, and we were kind of just game by game, hoping we get a result, seeing what happens, if you like. A month stint with a caretaker manager as well, and ultimately he did a really good job, the Southampton result aside, where he actually got some good results and perhaps makes the situation look a lot better than it should. But we're not really, I think, a threat at relegation anymore, I would say. Probably just sort of in the middle of the table and looking to maybe get something going this season that we can push into next season and actually have a proper go, if you like, then under the new manager. So.
And that was quite a late equaliser at the weekend. That must be a tough one to take. Did they play all right? Was it a good game apart from that?
Yeah, well, I was up in the away end, so the equaliser was, not a very nice one to take. But look, take off my Swansea glasses, and I think it would have been harsh for Birmingham to lose the game. Maybe a draw is a fair result. if anything, they probably say they did enough to win. We could have been 2-3-0 down before we scored the first goal. And I know Birmingham equalised straight away. But I don't know if you will remember back to when Russell Martin first came in, you probably had moments where they started passing along the back and you're like, oh my God, what are they doing? Like taking stupid risks and getting caught out quite often.
Yeah,
it was all over again. It was
Yeah.
that all over again for the first 20 minutes in the game. And Bashir Humphreys in particular struggled with that new approach because he wasn't here under Russell Martin. And I think out of all of the defenders, he's the one that kind of definitely needs to adjust to it and put the keeper under all sorts of pressure once or twice. So should have been 2-0 down before we even scored. So, if that had happened, no one could have argued with the result. It's just frustrating when you do go 95 minutes winning the game and then concede that late on. But it is what it is.
So they've reverted back to the style they were playing under Russell Martin. Was there a bit of a departure away from that?
Yeah. So Michael Duff, I can't really tell you his philosophy and game plan from what he brought to Swansea, but from what we were sold by Barnsley, I spoke to some Barnsley fans as well before he came in, more direct. He does want to play good football, keep the ball, but nowhere near as much as what Russell Martin would have done. And I guess the way they talk about it is, I don't want to just pass the ball for the sake of it. Whatever you think of that comment, that's the way that he sold it. I wants to be a little bit more direct and useful with the ball and attacking. We didn't really see an awful lot of that though, whether it was because he didn't have enough time to put a stamp on the game. But I feel like he was set up to fail before he even kicked the ball because he was kind of already trying to distance himself from what we had before. Russell Martin left to a lot of fans kind of discontent, and they enjoy that style of football. We call it the Swansea way, not just his brand, but the overall brand of keeping the ball, keeping possession and passing. It brought us success when we got to the Premier League. So it's a long philosophy that we've had at Swansea. So when managers leave from that philosophy, they've got to get results, I guess, to be able to continue that way. And if they don't, then it doesn't really go very well for them. Russell Martin had some times where he didn't get results. I think there was something like 3 wins in 23 games last season from January to March, where that was a really poor time, and we were on the brink of should he go before we had a really good end to the season, and obviously went to yourselves. But because he was playing this brand of football, I think that's why he was able to go that long with such a poor run of form. And yeah, that's basically what it boils down to here. So Luke Williams coming back, it's only 1 game in, so it's hard to say you're going to see that style of football, but that is the intention of where he wants to go. He says the difference is scoring more goals and being a little bit more direct and perhaps not direct, but clinical, I think, than what we maybe had before. But I think Russell Martin's also adapted in that way as well since he's moved on. So it would be interesting to see how they go up against each other.
I've got to ask Luke just about the game at St Mary's. What went wrong from your point of view, or was that just a blip and a bad day?
I'll be honest, it was Boxing Day, wasn't it? And
Yeah,
I thought
was it
I
a Christmas hangover?
Yeah, well, I thought I pulled a short stroke because I was actually working, and a bunch of my friends were going down on the bus, and I think actually they pulled a short straw. So, but from what they have explained from the day, I think there's a lot of. It wasn't just Swansea against Southampton. I think there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff in that game that it does look like a bit of an anomaly in the results. Russell Martin and the way he left, and his relationship with our board, our owners, the whole what could have been if you had backed me, all of that, and it feels like I told you so in the result, if you like. And if you look at the results, either side of it, it is definitely the one that stands out as something went wrong here. But when you kind of understand the situation around his relationship with the club and how he left, and maybe some of the players who were not happy with the fact that they've gone from playing his football to what Michael Duff brought in, it kind of is understandable when you know the full situation as well. But not excusable, I think, ever to lose 5-0 in any match of football. But the circumstances are unique, and I think it's one of them for Swansea fans to just say, right, let's just forget about that one and move on. And hopefully, coming back here now a couple of weeks later, we can put it right. But yeah, that's another conversation.
Well, we'll get onto your score prediction as well in a minute. I just want to chat to some of the guys. I mean, Alfie, it's not going to be another 5-0, is it? It's not going to be the same as Boxing Day, but it's going to be interesting to see what sort of a side we're up against and what changes Luke Williams can make in such a short space of time.
Yeah, well, the one thing I would say to you, Luke, is that Russell was talking about Luke Williams just off the record after a press conference with my colleague who's a Swansea fan, and he only had really positive, nice things to say about him. So whether he's just hiding any animosity there or not, I'm not sure, but I think they do really get on. You spoke about it last week, Glenn, and definitely Steve as well. They don't seem to have this sort of knack of scoring 4 or 5 goals away from home. So I'm sort of weighing up what I'm going to do in my prediction, because I think if Luke Williams is going to come with this sort of passing style, we've seen Blackburn, we've seen Swansea, we've seen a couple of teams do it. They are going to tear them apart. But at the same time, I can't really bet against the history of not sort of scoring 4 or 5 away. So I think Saints will end up being comfortable winners, but I don't think they're going to score loads of goals.
Steve, the FA Cup is the week after, so there's no need to rest anybody. You think off the back of a good win, we're going to set up the same and the same 11 start for this one?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there are any changes. It would only be down to either fitness or illness or whatever. Obviously, Flynn Downs has had his illness challenges this season already, so you can never quite rule out anything like that. But there's unless there's a reason to do it. I don't see any way we're not naming the same starting 11 really. We don't have all of our big guns available. That obviously with injuries and international call-ups, so that kind of first choice 11 has obviously changed slightly over the last 2 or 3 weeks, but having done the business on Saturday, go again, lads, I think.
Do you think there's a headline in the making there, Glenn? Manager goes back to old club and unbeaten run comes to an end?
Well, it's possible. I mean, when we played Swansea on Boxing Day, I thought it was one of those sod's law things, so that'd be the game that we lost. And it didn't turn out that way. It's ridiculous fixture scheduling, isn't it? I mean, back in the days before I started supporting, the away fixture used to be the week after the home fixture, and all the grudges got held over. And that's one of the reasons why they stopped doing that, because no one had time to forget who kicked them last week, sort of thing. So this is a bit of a strange one. Yeah, ridiculous fixture scheduling in my book. It's set up for the script writers. Are we trying to equal some other record this weekend?
Well, trying to surpass the record.
Oh, it's just trying to surpass the one they did yesterday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as I said all along, we're going to lose at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't, honestly, there was such a gulf between the teams in the last game. I don't think Swansea, they're going to be better than they were, because they can't be worse. But I don't see them making enough improvement to sort of like knock us out of our stride. But against that, you've got the fact that, we do struggle to score this second goal away from home and put teams away. So we're always liable, and as has happened 3 or 4 times recently, to get pegged back to 1-1 in the last few minutes. So I'll be interested to see how some of the Swansea players get on, because I was keeping an eye on Matt Grimes in the last game, because he was a player that we were linked with. It was actually my son that pointed it out. He said Grimes looks like he's trying to play Russell Martin football with players around him who are not good enough to do it.
That's it all over. That's our season in a nutshell.
Yeah,
basically.
and of course your goalkeeper played the air shot, and Nathan Wood, who we were also linked with, looked like a fish up a tree. So I don't know if those two are still playing. So it'll be interesting to see how the difference in the Swansea team. But no, I'm fairly confident we'll get over the line in this one, but it won't be anywhere near a repeat of the score that we had last time. No.
Yeah. Luke, I know you've got to go and get on with your own podcast tonight, so if I can just trouble you for a score prediction before we let you go. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, it's no problem. I know, to get my score, I know you mentioned what's going to be different this time. Well, I'd imagine the setup and formation you'll notice is a bit different. And from what I gathered from Luke Williams' first game yesterday against Birmingham, he's going to play a 3 at the back with wing backs, but the wing backs will be more like wingers. They're going to be very high up. Whether we've got the personnel at the moment to fit into those roles and do a really good job against a team that's going to be very, very well capable of playing that style of football, we'll wait and see. I personally don't think we're going to manage to stop your unbeaten run. If we can get a draw, that'll be a massive result, I think, after what happened on Boxing Day. But I think my head is telling me probably won't get anything from this one. I'm going to say probably a comfortable... I'll say 2-1, because I think maybe they'll want to show enough to maybe get a goal, but I just can't see them having enough to maybe see it out or get over the line, even if we go ahead with the worst team in the league for keeping the lead. So
I wasn't going to bring that up because last year that was us, and every time someone brought that up, it was just so annoying. But it's important that we know that when we're doing the predictions. So, right, Luke, thank you. We'll put you down for a 2-1 if that's all right.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And then, thanks for coming on, and we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the season. Cheers,
That's
Luke.
right. Thanks, and good luck in the Premier League. So there we go.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Luke.
Yeah, see you next year.
Let's get our predictions, Steve. I mean, it's interesting when we have talked about it. Just that scoring that second goal away from home has been a problem, and with the amount of away games we've got coming up now, this is a good time to put that right.
Yeah, 5 of the next 6 away from home, and then weirdly after that, 4 of the following 5 are at home. So really strange set of fixture scheduling going on in the next 6 to 8 weeks or so. But 16 goals in 13 away league games, which for a team that has designs on automatic promotion, frankly, is not enough. It's something that needs improving. I think signs are good. That the home form is absolutely nailed. So we can now actually focus on what we're going to do that's slightly different away from home. That's going to start seeing similar results on our travels, because I mean some of the performances away from home have been absolutely fine, and we've just not kind of converted the chances. And yet there have also been others where, frankly, we've been lucky to get out of games with a point in the bag. So I mean, if you think games like Preston, where we were rubbish for that second half, Coventry, we were pretty mediocre in that one. Watford, we had 20 minutes where we completely lost the plot. So it's a case of kind of finding a way to win in our kind of way, but sort of in sort of more unfamiliar surroundings. And it's always weird, that sort of psychology of why a team's form away from home should be any different to their team at home, because you're playing on the same size grass. The pitch dimensions are no different across the league, so it shouldn't make any difference, but historically it always has done. And it's very strange psychology thing. We need to find a way of just making sure we take chances. Like so many times we go 1-0 up, and we then create maybe 1 or 2 really good chances after, which we don't take. And then all of a sudden the opposition gets a little bit of confidence, and I mean, even if they get their goals an absolute fluke, they find a way through. Like Huddersfield and Watford, I mean, those 2 late equalisers were, I mean, they shouldn't have gone in. Neither of them. The Huddersfield one's a cross, and the obviously the Watford one, Bazounu's made a pig's ear of it. So it's those are 2 wins that really we should have back. But now we've got to go and earn our points in what's probably going to be a slightly trickier environment for us.
Yeah. What am I putting you down for your prediction?
I think we'll do it. In fact, actually, Luke saying that they're going to play with wing backs, and those wing backs are going to be playing very high up the pitch, all of a sudden made me think, ooh, hello.
Yeah, same.
Like, rub my hands with your knee here. All of the space in behind those wing back or wingers or whatever you want to call them. I mean, if they do play that way, then actually I think we'll tear them apart. And yeah, I mean, 3-0. Why not?
3-0. All right. Okay. Alfie?
Yeah, I'll go for a nice, comfortable 2-0, as I alluded to. I think they'll get a goal sort of towards the end of the first half, and then maybe there'll be a bit of a debut lift in the last 15-20 minutes, and that will just give everybody a bit of energy and get the second one.
Glen, sounds like they might have a mistake in the back 3. Sounds like we might be able to pounce on an early goal. It sounded a bit like they were going through some of the growing pains that we had back in the summer.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm going to go for a 2-0 win as well. I just don't see, as I said when Luke was on, I just don't see Swansea improving that much. I mean, what we need to do in away games, if you look at our home games, I never feel like there's a dead period of the game now where we're just being passive and passing it around, and we're not going to score in this sort of 10-minute section. It feels like we can score at any time at the moment. And away from home, we still have these sort of, I'm going to call them possession for the sake of it, periods of the game where we first half in particular, where we just seem to be happy to get to half time at 0-0 sometimes. I just think, we have to be a little bit more on the front foot in these away games, and try not to have those periods where we have possession but we don't do anything with it. Of course, home teams are more prone to attack you, so you have to, Flynn Downs is going to be busy if we when we cough possession up. That's why we struggled the game against Norwich, wasn't it? We suddenly allowed them to run through midfield, and we just didn't control that at all. So, there's a number of sort of like small things to tweak, but the way things are going at the moment, I do trust sort of like Russell Martin to address these things and get them right. Like we've gradually been getting better and better at home, and with was it 5 and 6 you're saying away from home?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is obviously the main time to do that, because he won't be happy with the away form and the points we've been dropping away from home. So it's certainly going to be something they try and address. So I think this will be the first step on the way to that, and 2-0.
Of course, the other thing is it's Leicester Ipswich this weekend, isn't it, Steve? I think it might be the Monday night, but that's a good incentive. And I think it's not until the Monday, is it? And we play first on the Saturday.
It's huge. Having the early kickoff. So even if they were Saturday 3:00, we would have that opportunity to go back into the top 2 before they kick off.
A bit longer this week.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, a couple of days to kind of stew in it and look at how they're gonna get through. I mean, it was a pretty ballsy win, I thought, for Ipswich last night against Sunderland, when Sunderland were probably the better side in the first half mostly, but ground it out and found a way to win, and that's always a good sign if that's your team and you're winning games in those situations. Them going to Leicester, I thought Leicester were bang average yesterday against Coventry. Cov were very good, I thought, and they're a side. I think that draw at the Rico will probably end up looking a much better result by the end of the season. But yeah, Leicester had their backsides handed to them by Coventry in that second half, albeit with a man advantage.
That was one of the biggest cheers of the afternoon when they read out that full-time score. That and the Pompey one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was in the cricketers pre-match, and they had it on the telly, and there was solid cheers went up for all the Coventry goals. But yeah, I mean, Pompey's winter discontent is well underway, isn't it? It's good fun at the moment.
I'll tell you a quick story about that. So last night I went to a gig at the Wedgwood Rooms in Portsmouth, and I met my Pompey supporting mate who was at Fratton Park. Well, he was until half time anyway. And he sent me
3-goal rule, perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, and he sent me a picture of a pie that he'd bought inside the ground, which had the Pompey crest emblazoned in it. And he said, if I'd put shorts and a pair of boots on this pie, it would have done better than our midfield. So he'd had a few beers by the time I met him, actually. So, good night.
Love it. Right, a couple of other things before we finish. Let's talk January transfer window. I mean, Alfie, we're going to lean on you a bit for this, I'm afraid. Joe Rothwell coming in on loan by the looks of it. Rumour has it, I think maybe medical today, could be confirmed tomorrow. Did you see that one come in? Because I don't think any of us did.
No, I really didn't, I'll be honest. It did come out of nowhere. I mean, Russell Martin said to us on Friday that he wanted obviously a winger and maybe one more. So that was obviously the one more he was alluding to. Unless they are just pulling a fast one on us and they're going to go out and buy 4 or 5. I'm not expecting that. It struck me as strange at first, just because they've already got 2 players for each of the midfield positions. You've obviously got the 2 6s, 2 8s and 2 10s. And I know Joe Rebo as an 8 is away at the moment, but he'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks, or based on Nigeria's draw with Equatorial Guinea today, maybe in about 7 days. But Joe Rothwell's got a load of championship experience. He's played 150 games. He's apparently a good character, and he's somebody who, he's not a 6 like Flynn Downs. I don't think there's any worry about Flynn Downs going back to West Ham. I've seen a few things like that. I mean, look, don't shoot the messenger, but I don't think that's going to happen. He's somebody who's a ball carrying 8. He scores goals. He's really good, like driving forward, progressive passes and stuff like that. It's all really good. So I think it's a good move in terms of just acting quickly when somebody comes available, adding a bit of quality, a bit of experience to the squad. I've got no complaints of it at all. And obviously, maybe it presents a bit of an issue for Mason Holgate because you can only have, obviously, as we know, 5 loan players in any given match day squad.
I was going to ask about that. Have you been checking that today? Like how many we can have in the squad and how many we can have in the match day squad? Because it's 2 different things, isn't it?
What an unbelievably boring document the EFL regulations are. It's hundreds of pages long. But yeah, you can have 5. You can have more than 5 loan players signed in one season, but only 5 can be named in a squad. So if Rothwell comes in, which we're expecting tomorrow, Mason's going to get nowhere near the squad. He's relying on injury or relying on a suspension or something to even get in the 20-man squad, let alone off the bench.
Quick count up. How many have we got at the moment?
This will be the 5th, I believe. This will be the 6th. No, this will be the 5th. But obviously, they want to get a winger in as well on loan. So that'll be the 6th, which will then.
They want to get one. They've said they want to get one on loan. They're not.
Well, I mean, the financial fair play at the moment is that's the most likely way of getting somebody in. They may go out and spend £5 million on somebody, but if you want to get someone like David Brooks, for example, you're not going to buy him, are you?
Are we going to be able to? If we're going to get Rothwell,
you can loan 2 players from any given club over the age of 23 and 2 more under the age of 23.
It wasn't a case of we went in for Brooks and they said no, but you can have Rothwell. Like when Villa tried to sign James Ward-Prowse and we gave them Danny Ings. It wasn't anything like that, was it? That was the first thing that jumped out at me. It kind of makes sense, Glenn, I guess. I know it's probably not the Nathan Tedder replacement that we were all crying out for, but someone with a bit of, as Alfie says, some championship experience coming in, and we're going to need players going forward because there's a lot of football still to be played.
I'm going to trust the process on this one because I don't fully get it at the moment. I don't really know enough about Joe Rothwell to say each way. Something Alfie said, we're kind of replacing Joe Aribo, who's going to be away for a month maximum, but we're not replacing Ross Stewart, the Croc Nest Drogba, who's dead, and he's not going to be around till 2029 or something. So yeah, it does seem a bit strange, but I trust Russell Martin knows the player. He was at Blackburn, was it, before Bournemouth, and that's where he got all his championship games. He was quite a sought after player at that time. So he obviously sees a role for him somewhere. I think he likes to have, like a shadow midfield. We've seen this already where we've had 2 games in 3 days or something, and he's picked, I can't remember which game it was, but we had one game where Smallbone, Alcaraz and Charles all came in and replaced, the 3 that had played the previous game. So he obviously wants to do that. Maybe he wants to use Joe Aribo further up the pitch when he comes back. I don't know. So I don't fully understand it at this moment in time. So yeah, like I say, trust the process. We'll see what happens.
I do think there's an argument that you can't really have too many good players, I suppose. The squad isn't huge, is it? They've got 2 in every position. It's not massive. You're only a couple of injuries away from maybe potentially being light. So maybe that's just what they're thinking. And if this, it's a purely wage basis, no obligation to buy, it's just for 6 months. Maybe it's the sort of outlay that they can afford, and they can't go and buy somebody big.
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me slightly is that usually these loan deals come with some sort of he must play, or he must play a certain amount of minutes. And on the face of it, Rothwell doesn't seem like he's not definitely going to start, is he? So
those sort of loans tend to be for sort of young development players, where actually the whole aim of it is, right, you're sending this player out on loan to get first team experience, so therefore part of the deal is he's got to play. But with Rothwell, I mean, he's been around a while now. He's 26, I think.
29.
Oh, that old. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the same lines as Glenn. I don't quite see it. Especially given the number of loans we've already got. So yeah, maybe there's a deal to be done with Everton for Holgate to go back, but then as soon as we do that one of our centre backs will get injured again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for the rest of the month. Yeah, not quite sure.
Okay, and there was one other signing, wasn't there, Alfie, earlier in the week? Was it the young lad from
Cour
Ireland?
City. Yeah, Joe O'Brien Whitmarsh. So he's an 18. You know what? He's actually a very similar profile from what it sounds like to Joe Rockwell, really. A sort of 8 or a 10 that's quite dynamic ball carrying. But he's an 18-year-old from Cork City. They paid a very small fee up front, and I think it could end up rising to the 100,000 quoted. But right now, that's not the headline figure. Look, it's just about keeping this conveyor belt of young players, I suppose, isn't it? And I said a couple of weeks ago they've sort of identified you can get pretty good value players in Ireland because they're playing men's football at the age of 17, and they're getting stuck in and stuff like that. So another one, a slightly different player to Tyler Diblin, but somebody who's creative in field, and he'll play for them in 21s when he's ready. The only thing about him is it might take a few weeks for him to be sort of up to scratch because I think the Irish season finished about 6 weeks ago and he hasn't played a game since. So I think he'll have to go through his own individual pre-season before they start playing for the 21s. But I went to the 21s game on Friday. They lost 3-2 to Spurs. They'd be really, really disappointed with all three of the goals they conceded. But I thought they were excellent. They play the Russell Martin way. They're really well coached. They're brave. They play out the back so well. And most of them are 17, 16 years old. They had 2 15-year-olds starting, making their Premier League 2 debuts as well. So I thought they did a really good job. I did want to mention
Spurs 23s have won every game, haven't they?
Yeah, they haven't lost a game this season, have they? I think.
They've got an old group. They're all 20 years old. So they're playing teams that are 3 or 4 years younger than them. And, in Southampton's case, 5 years younger.
I guess the good thing as well, Steve, is it's another week where no one's left. That all seems to be a little bit quiet at the moment. We've got players coming in that we're talking about rather than rumours about those that are going.
Yeah, been very quiet this week, hasn't it? Maybe calm before the storm, I would imagine. That last week is going to be silly, isn't it? You're going to get agents touting players around all over the place. Shea Adams is clearly going to be linked with basically everybody just above the dotted line in the bottom half of the Premier League, isn't he? But I think realistically, actually, it's probably in his interests to stay because he's going to play enough. He'll score some goals, so he'll keep himself fit and in form for the Scotland squad in the summer. If he goes to the Premier League, he might not play.
It's a good shout about the Scotland squad, yeah.
For whoever he joins, sure, yeah, as a new signing, they're going to want to kind of integrate him fairly quickly. But if he's not scored in 5 or 6 games at the start, suddenly he's an option off the bench again, and then Steve Clarke's looking at Lyndon Dykes being the useless battering ram for QPR and thinking, oh, actually he's a better option for me because he's at least playing.
The centre forward market, a lot will depend on, like, for example, if Ivan Toney moved, then obviously Brentford are going to be looking for a striker.
I don't see any way Brentford could possibly let him go.
Nor do I. It's just
because otherwise they'll go down.
If
someone loses, 80 million quid sized briefcase probably do the job, I imagine.
But the clubs that are likely to
be answer 2-1 on that.
It's Arsenal or Chelsea, isn't it, who are going to be the two clubs who basically need him, and Arsenal definitely can't do 80 million quid with their financial fair play, and Chelsea will probably find some stupid loophole where they could shove it off into the accounts for 2046, but it just doesn't seem plausible this month.
But your point there, Glenn, is that it will take a move probably in the Premier League to get things going, and then there might be a last minute bit of business. And
Wolves seem interested, but it comes back to Steve's point. The last week is always mental because that's when these sort of deals happen, and then someone has to panic. Someone has to panic and replace someone that they weren't expecting to lose, and all this sort of stuff. Logic tells you that with Saints going the way they are, why would you leave? It's different for Adams because he's out of contract at the end of the year. Yeah. And I guess there's always a chance at some point that Saints might say, that contract offer, say for argument's sake, we're promoted with 4 games to go. They might just say, see you later, because...
Yeah. Well, we've seen what he's like in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Is that return? And for years we were always saying, well, he just needs a bit of time and to kind of get up to speed with the level, and then we could see a 15-goal season, and yet we haven't. And it's been what 4 years now? Was it 5? I can't remember. But yeah, he's not quite done it. So we know that he's of that level, and unfortunately, Adam Armstrong is probably in a similar boat. In that, if we go up, how much is he actually going to play next season? The one that I'm interested in is Stuart Armstrong. It's gone very
Yeah.
quiet on his contract. I'd like to see that getting resolved one way or the other sooner rather than later, to be honest.
It's just
Yeah,
Alex
the soft
McCarthy that we're
resurgence
not worried
one.
about.
Alex McCarthy.
That's the only name that doesn't keep coming up, isn't it? The women's team were back in action as well today. 2-0 win versus Sunderland in the FA Cup. I think the draw for the next round is on Monday evening, so we'll look out for that. And we always say about dropping us a message. A few people have been in touch with some messages this week. Lee says, Taylor and I travelled from Cornwall to the game yesterday. It was his first ever Saints game. He's 9 years old, and the club were brilliant with organising some lovely touches for him and a great result to boot up the Saints. Thank you to Lee. Thanks to Taylor for getting in touch. And Colt Baker, who's one of our patrons, he's organising a USA national fan meetup. Now, I know this is a bit niche and it's not going to apply to everybody, but Saturday, April the 20th is the date for the calendar. That's the Cardiff game. It's going to be at the Embassy Public House, which is in Chicago, if you're interested. You can find out more. You can get in touch. They've got a Facebook page, which is the USA Saints Supporters Facebook page. It's United States of Southampton FC, or Colt is pretty active on X. He's at Stateside Saints. So you can give him a shout for more information. And if any of us are interested in going, I think BA are doing flights for about 415 quid at the moment. So get in touch with Colt. We'll have more on that for you. On that note, that's pretty much it for this week. Thanks again to Pitter Self Drive for sponsoring the episode. Don't forget they offer cars, vans, trucks and minibuses for flexible short-term or long-term rentals with a 24-hour drop-off service. They're also offering TSP listeners 10% off the rental with the code Total Saints. That's all one word. You can use that code when you book online or quote the code when you're booking over the phone. You can find out more by heading to pitterselfdrive.co.uk or give them a call on 02380 474 443. Don't forget you can follow us on all the socials. It's at Total Saints Pod. We do like to hear from you during the week, so you can drop us a DM if you like, or you can email us via the website if you've got something to share. We're also on Patreon. We mentioned this at the start, and that's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 different tiers on there that range from £5 to £20 per month, and each of the tiers comes with those different perks, including the weekly shout outs for the patrons in the Francis Benali or the Mick Shannon tiers. So thanks to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe and Mike E in the Francis Benali tier, and also to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrop, Matt Hall and Mark Littlewood, who are all in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Alfie. Cheers to Glen as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again